Hi, I'm Margaret with Civic Nebraska's Voting Rights Team, and today we're going to talk about the 26th Amendment. I have a friend with me from University of Nebraska, Kearney. We have Haley Mazour, who will be a junior this next year. Thanks for joining us, Haley.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So in order to talk about the 26th Amendment, we need to first start in 1844 with the first U.S. election. And at that time, no federal voting age was established. Over time, states would come to accept the age of 21 as the norm for when a person could register to vote. And of course, when we say person, we mean at the time only white men who owned property were allowed to vote. So then we're going to fast forward quite a ways until World War II. And in 1942, President Roosevelt lowers the minimum age for the military draft to the age of 18. With many young people serving in the armed forces, they felt they should have a voice in establishing the policy behind those decisions. So they would develop the phrase, old enough to fight, old enough to vote. And it becomes a slogan for a youth movement. As a result, in 1943, Georgia becomes the first state to lower the voting age to 18. In 1954, President Eisenhower, who had served as a general in World War II, he calls for lowering the voting age to 18. He said, "For years, our citizens between the ages of 18 and 21 have, in time of peril, been summoned to fight for America. They should participate in the political process that produces this fateful summons." Then in the 1960s, the civil rights movement, followed by the war in Vietnam, saw a rise in student and youth activism, both on campuses and in communities. As a result of this, in 1970, President Nixon will sign the new voting rights bill, which lowers the voting age to 18. And he said, "Although I strongly favor the 18-year-old vote, I believe, along with most of the nation's leading constitutional scholars, that Congress has no power to enact it by simple statute, but rather it requires a constitutional amendment." And Nixon was actually right on that count. So there is a lawsuit, and the Supreme Court rules in the case of Oregon versus Mitchell that the lowered voting age applies only to federal elections. Congress would quickly take action, though, in 1971, and the 26th Amendment is ratified by 3/4 of the required states in just 2 months. This is a record for how quickly any amendment ever passed through the states. It's signed into law on July 5th by President Nixon, and the U.S. sees a record voter turnout participation in the 1972 general election. So just to look at today a little bit about what voting rights mean to young people. Haley, what does voting mean to you?
I think what voting means to me is definitely, it's a sense of pride and a sense of obligation to make sure that like what I am advocating for and what I care about is being heard. I know that a lot of youth, especially in Nebraska, especially in the 3rd district, feel like, our vote doesn't matter. We're not going to win anyway. A lot of things young people care about aren't popular. But I feel like at the same time, when you look at the numbers of who's voting for those things, there's still a sense of pride in, even if it's a part of the losing numbers, to look at those numbers and say that, like, that was me. I did that. And building towards like slow change in that way. I know when I was 18, I think the very first thing I did was go and register to vote. And I remember the first election I could vote in was in the 2018 primary. And it was so exciting to just like go in and walk in and like, I don't know, it felt like it was a very physical expression of what I believed, and a very physical expression of like being able to make change, even if it's in a very subtle way, even if it's just, in something that seems small, but is really so monumental with voting. It's a physical expression of all of that.
Well, thank you, Haley. And the rest of you, if you care about voting rights, if you're passionate about voting the way Haley is, we would love to see you become a voting rights advocate. It's really easy to do. You can help us defend democracy. There's a QR code right there. You can scan that with your smartphone or go to the website listed below, and we would love to have you join our team of people who care about democracy. Thanks for being here, Haley.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching, everyone.